Academy with Dr. Hashemi. The series where partial discharge concepts are explained step by step. Today's episode is about criteria for PD evaluation. Previously, we discussed about different methods for partial discharge detection, electrical and non-electrical methods. Today, I introduce the criteria for evaluation the PD and PD test by different methods like electrical PD measurement, UHF or acoustic emission solutions. In each of these methods and technology that you used to detect the partial discharge, you should have some criteria to evaluate the system. The system and high voltage asset is at risk or it can work properly. One of the important criteria for PD evaluation is PD magnitude. It means the level of the PD is super important. After measuring the PD by different methods, you should make a decision about the level of the PD. If you have the standards for the high voltage assets like the transformers, GIS or others, you have some acceptance criteria for the PD magnitude and level of the PD. Based on the methods that you use for partial discharge detection, the results are reported in picocoulomb or nanocoulomb for electrical PD measurement according to the IEC 60270 standard, or maybe they are reported in decibel, millivolt, or nanometer. For example, OptiFinder that is working based on the fiber optic acoustic emission technology report the PD in nanometer. Another criteria for PD evaluation is PD inception voltage or PDIV. If you read the books and references for partial discharge in high voltage asset, you see this technical subject. It means if you apply the voltage to the high voltage asset like the transformer or cable system or cable termination or cable joint, by increasing the voltage, the PD starts at a certain level. And before that level or voltage level, you don't have any PD. PD appears after the certain voltage level. This voltage is so important because by knowing the PDIV, you can have data about the duration of PD for the system. If the PDIV or PD inception voltage is higher than the normal operation voltage, it means the PD does not appear in normal condition and you will be in the safe side. But if the PDIV is so low, the system has the PD most of the time and it is not needed to trigger and ignite the partial discharge and defect in the system, and it is dangerous for the asset. In the standards for the high voltage equipment and assets, there are some criteria for the PDIV. Depends on the asset and the type of the installations and dielectric materials that you have. Another criteria is PD extension voltage or PDEV. Similar to the PD, you have PD in the high voltage equipment and high voltage asset, and if the voltage is decreased step by step, the PD disappears after a certain level of voltage. You measure the PDEV, and if the PDEV is high, it is good for your asset. It means if the PD is ignited by external sources or others, it disappeared very soon. But if the PDEV is low, the PD remains in the high voltage asset, and the deterioration of the high voltage asset life and quality and condition will be affected adversely. Another item that you should consider in your evaluation for PD is repetition rate of the PD. Sometimes the repetition rate of the partial discharge is high. Sometimes you see the partial discharge does not happen very frequently. And the repetition rate is another item that you should consider in your evaluation. Another item is phase resolve PD or PRPD patterns and plots. The PRPD is an important tool for evaluating the partial discharge. If you have results and plots of the partial discharge based on the phase of the sign voltage that you have different patterns. And based on the patterns of the PD, you can interpret the type of the PD that you have in your high voltage asset. In next episode, I discuss more about the PRPD and how you can plot the PRPD and how you can interpret the PRPD. It is more complicated compared to other items that I discussed. Today, we discussed the topic of criteria for PD evaluation. I listed different criteria. You have been introduced with PD magnitude, PD IV, PD EV, repetition rate, and PRPD as criteria for evaluation of the partial discharge. Most of these criteria should be considered in evaluation of the PD. Based on the standard, you see the levels and acceptance level of each of these items or all of them. And based on that, you can decide about the asset health condition. Thank you for watching. We see you in the next episode.